Hello and welcome to Stories in Life. Here we share real and emotional stories that touch the heart, make you think, and sometimes even change the way you see the world. If you love deep, meaningful life experiences, subscribe now and join our community. Your support helps us bring you even more powerful stories that inspire, move, and stay with you long after the video ends. So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story together. Tom's father absolutely adored the singer Tamara Gvertzitelli. When she appeared on screen and began singing with her deep, rich voice, father would simply freeze, and he might even shed a tear if no one but his wife was around. So when his beloved daughter was born, who later turned out to be his only child, there was no question about what to name her. Mother initially tried to suggest Olivia, but father wouldn't budge, and she quickly gave up. No luck with Olivia's books. Let it be Queen Tamara, though the little girl bore no resemblance to the Georgian queen in appearance. She turned out to be Slavic fair with blonde hair and blue eyes. And no one, not even father, ever actually called her Tamara. The name simply didn't suit her. Sometimes Tom thought that this unsuitable name, like something borrowed, had left its mark on her life. Too often it turned out she was living as if on loan. No particular convictions of her own, no aspirations, everything momentary. Lately, Tom's passion was romance novels. Other books seemed boring, but these she devoured indiscriminately, both domestic and foreign, good ones and frankly cheap ones. What else was a childless housewife to do when the apartment could easily pass inspection for cleanliness by an army sergeant, when dinner was on the stove and laundry was dry on the balcony? In the novels, a phrase often appeared. Later, the heroine would often think, if she hadn't done this or hadn't gone there, everything would have been fine for her, meaning without surprises like before. This thought would have suited her too, except she hadn't thought about anything like that when her whole life broke apart into before and after. In the first normal half, she had lived well and peacefully. You could say she finally found herself after meaningless and boring studies at the business school. Tom understood little in the endless, tedious lectures, sluggishly crawled from year to year thanks to cheat sheets, her parents, and rare persistence, and knew for certain that she'd make no kind of economist. She would never work, and no sensible boss would let Tom near financial documents. Still, life is a strange thing. How much effort and money her parents had invested in that diploma, and for what? By logic, they should be offended. No return on investment. But her parents were still proud that their daughter was an economist. Never mind that the diploma was gathering dust somewhere in the closet, abandoned there right after graduation. Once her parents went abroad for vacation. Dad generally didn't approve of foreign travel. He was a devotee of, as he put it, the modest beauty of the countryside. He worshipped this beauty, usually at the cottage, sleeping until noon, swaying in a rocking chair or hammock under the apple tree, reading, drinking beer, watching TV on the porch. It never came to forest walks, fishing at 5 a.m., or mushroom picking. But somehow his work colleagues convinced father to head off to Turkey. And however much he protested, saying we don't need their Turkish shores, he gave in after all. Still, he was a distinguished man, in a good position, well off, yet vacationing like a low-income retiree. We can afford it. Muttering these golden words under his breath and secretly proud of himself, father and mother packed their suitcases and headed to the airport. Turkey disappointed them with literally everything. The heat, the crowds, the white-toothed grinning Turks, the unfamiliar food that gave them stomach problems. They didn't like the room or the beaches or the excursions. And father spat about it for several years afterward. 2 weeks thrown out of life. Where's the logic? Tom wondered, remembering her own worthless diploma. After finishing university, she gladly began doing what nature had intended for her. She got married and settled down at home. She and Paul, her husband, had met back in college, at the same business school. Thank him at least for that. Only with Paul, everything went excellently. Straight A's without much effort. God had given him both memory and abilities. After receiving his inevitable summa cum laude diploma, Paul got a job at a serious auditing firm. In a couple of years, he worked his way up to deputy director, started earning an amazing salary, and he wasn't even 30 yet. Tom was proud of her husband when Paul brought home his tired, wise head. She fed him like royalty and provided rest in every way possible. Paul was satisfied, praised his wife, told friends at parties how lucky he was. Beautiful, domestic, good-natured, doesn't meddle in his affairs, understands, loves. What a find for a career-focused man. Tom melted, blushed with pleasure and the unshakable nature of her position, and doubled her efforts. The only thing was, children just wouldn't happen for them. At first, Tom didn't mind. Then she was very much in favor. And lately, having lived 7 years in a happy marriage, she wanted to give birth with all the passion she was capable of. Nature was taking its course, and holding a warm, dear little bundle to her chest was becoming an irresistible need. And Sarah, her closest friend from school and college, had given birth to little Ben. Soon he'd be a year old. So what if it was without a husband? All kind of things happen in life. Feeding in diapers, tender babbling, and cute little ties on tiny hands. First uncertain steps on wobbly legs, and even sleepless nights. All of this had become an obsession. Paul took a calmer approach to the problem. He was too busy at work. He just brushed off Tom's lamentations about children, getting irritated when she brought up the topic for the 100th time. Tom quietly, without telling her husband, had herself examined by all kinds of doctors, and they assured her that everything was fine. Yeah, everything's fine except I can't conceive, she thought bitterly to herself. She could console herself that there were still several years until 35, and closer to that threshold, we'll see. Her mother's favorite saying. Tom's mother, incidentally, unlike her father, for some reason didn't like Paul, though there seemed to be no reason for it. The son-in-law turned out to be non-drinking, non-violent, hard-working and more than well provided for, and hadn't been caught in any affairs. But Helen Victoria still didn't love him with an irrational dislike. His laugh was too thin, feminine, and his voice was curt, and his eyes were bird-like. Paul looked without blinking, rarely blinked. He's somehow all wrapped up in himself, cold, Helen Victoria thought. But of course, she kept quiet. And what was there to say? Her daughter lived with everything provided. Content. She smiled at her son-in-law, praised him, and didn't accept him deep down. Paul sensed this and repaid her with the same polite wariness. Dusting the crystal that fateful day, taking clothes out to the balcony to air after winter, Tom was turning over thoughts about children in her head. Right now, there should be photos of laughing babies adorn the walls and shelves. Tom had always enjoyed cleaning. She liked opening closets, going through things, arranging them, throwing out those that had served their time, stuffing garbage bags with old magazines, unnecessary papers, out of fashion or impossibly tight clothes, broken pens, dried-out shoe polish, and other meaningless witnesses to their shared life with Paul. She felt she was gaining lightness, making room for something new. This advertising brochure caught her eye when she was enthusiastically digging through the chaos in the depths of Paul's shelf in the walk-in closet. The disorder here was terrible. Tom always wondered how Paul, so neat in his clothing and affairs, managed to create such a mess on his shelves. To find socks or underwear, he would carelessly rummage through everything and shove back a motley pile, leaving a shapeless lump instead of neat stacks. The brochure had been carelessly stuffed into a pile of underwear, wrapped in a blue T-shirt with a geometric pattern. At first, Tom wanted to crumple up the leaflet and send it to another garbage bag, but something suddenly and unpleasantly stung her in the stomach area, and she smoothed out the advertisement to read the inscription. A weak protesting voice from somewhere inside gave a warning squeak about danger. As they say, what we don't know won't hurt us. But her hands were unfolding the bright colored paper themselves, and her eyes were peering at the letters. The cheerful, glossy booklet invited guests to relax tastefully at the Enchanted Forest Resort. Luxury suites, restaurant with excellent cuisine, pool, sauna, billiards, disco, tennis court, and other delights. The picture showed fantastically rested ladies with unreal, photoshopped figures and white-toothed hunks with porcelain smiles. Unfolding the brochure with suddenly sweaty palms, Tom discovered that this wasn't just an advertising pamphlet. This was a voucher, properly dated and stamped with a very modest price. Paul had purchased for 3 full days plus arrival and departure days a honeymoon suite for 2 persons. Naturally, the treatment had taken place 6 months ago. Just at this time, Tom immediately remembered, Paul had gone to Chicago for an auditor's seminar. He left Thursday, returned Monday, very tired, but quite satisfied. His presentation was a success. Apparently, he had delivered from a king-size bed before a very limited audience. Flashed through Tom's mind. She found it hard to breathe. She automatically stepped toward the window and flung it wide open. Children's laughter burst into the apartment. Fragments of conversations, the rustling of car tires, music. The windows faced the courtyard, and every person in that courtyard continued living their ordinary lives. The fact that Tom's existence had been turned upside down changed nothing. She turned away from the window and sat in the armchair. Paul was cheating on her. He had another woman, and he had lied to his wife to spend a weekend with his mistress. Most likely, this wasn't the first or last time. The most terrible thing was that there could be no mistake. Tom had never suspected her husband of anything, hadn't set up any surveillance, and immediately, with complete obviousness, this knowledge had suddenly crashed down on her. There was no need to doubt anymore. No room for suspicion remained. Everything was crystal clear, and such an instant, obvious, and simple conclusion about her own married life was even somewhat absurd. When Tom was little, her parents often left her with Grandma Lisa, rest her soul. Grandma Lisa struck everyone around her with bewilderment. Later, many years after her death, Father once told Tom that next to his mother-in-law, he always felt as if at a reception with the English Queen's fly was unzipped and his shirt inside out. Everyone around, except her daughter and granddaughter, was obliged to call her Elizabeth Antonovna. No one dared call her Aunt Lisa. Even nephews wouldn't have dared such liberties, if she'd had any. Tall, trim, not considering it necessary to dye her gray hair, with a straight back, tightly pressed lips and a cold gaze, she never smiled and hardly spoke. Elizabeth Antonovna carried out her duties, caring for the Tom entrusted to her properly. She fed her tasty, filling meals, though without imagination, dressed her warmly, washed her, took her for walks. If asked whether she loved her granddaughter, Elizabeth Antonovna wouldn't have answered. Well, there is a granddaughter, and she herself is retired, so she needs to sit with her. She had always lived this way. Need to get married, got married. Need to give birth, gave birth to a daughter. She was a chemist. Her whole life she worked in some scientific laboratory, ran it, and never made a single mistake, though she never made a single discovery either. What went on in her gloomy head? Whether she was satisfied with life, no one knew. Once Grandma took Tom to a children's cafe. There stood a beautiful aquarium, and in the aquarium swam a large dark fish, slow, cold, solitary. Like clockwork, it moved along the same trajectory. Like Grandma, little Tom thought then, she hadn't remembered Elizabeth Antonovna for many years. She died when Tom was in second grade, but now for some reason a phrase came to mind that she sometimes said, you couldn't even remember when or why. Truth, like death, you can't look ahead on. The words had been imprinted in her memory mechanically, as if bypassing consciousness. But now Tom suddenly understood what they meant. She was afraid to see. That's why she hadn't dared to look. She couldn't allow herself the truth that could easily stop her heart and break her whole life. How? How could she allow herself to notice the increasingly frequent meetings, business trips, work excursions, often on weekends? To notice how Paul often came home after midnight, guiltily creeping in the dark and never eating the prepared dinner left for him, though he generally loved to eat. That sex had become rare. How he sometimes looked at her with concentrated, studying, pitying eyes and looked away if he caught her return gaze, and many, many other trifles that were so easy to dismiss individually, but which altogether pounced on her now like a hungry pack of dogs in winter at a cottage settlement. Tom sat in the armchair briefly. 45 minutes. She had a strange habit for a non-working person of constantly looking at her watch, calculating her time down to the minute. Where did she need to rush? What was this absurd punctuality for? But she couldn't overcome it even now. Falling into the armchair and rising from it, Tom automatically noted what time it was. Her head was empty and ringing. Her hands were frozen. She couldn't think and somehow didn't even suffer. The phone's trill seemed to shatter the glass cocoon that surrounded Tom. Her husband was calling. What did they talk about? She couldn't have remembered even at gunpoint, but she answered, listened, even laughed. And hanging up the receiver, she made a decision. She wouldn't say anything to Paul, would throw away the paper that incriminated him, and pretend nothing had happened. Somewhere, maybe in one of her numerous romance novels she had read. It's not important that they lie to you, but the very fact that they're trying to hide something. Why does Paul stay silent and not tell her about the other woman? Because he doesn't want to hurt her. Because he loves her in his own way. Because he's not planning to leave. There it is, the only thing that matters. If that other woman were dear to him, he wouldn't lie, but would tell the truth. I love her, he'd say, and I'm leaving. But he's silent. He won't destroy the family. It's just an infatuation. An infatuation passes. Relief washed over Tom. Yes, it was bitter, bad, hurtful now, but this could be endured. Yes, she'd have to sacrifice her pride. But what is pride compared to family happiness? It's prejudice and nothing more. Only by staying silent could she preserve the marriage and the financial situation and status. A thin little voice suggested somewhere in the depths of her consciousness. Yes, Tom answered the voice fiercely. That too. So what? She had spent years creating comfort, nourishing their union. She had done everything to become a good wife. Only in this was her life. In the end, she still loved her husband and would definitely bear him a child. So why trample everything now? And where would she go? What would she live on? And who needs this truth anyway? Paul will sow his wild oats and understand that the main thing in his life is family. He understands this already, apparently. That's why he hides his affairs. The mental dialogue with herself was suddenly interrupted by nausea. Something with her stomach, probably, or on nervous grounds. Tom thought, jerking open the bathroom door. She barely managed to lean over the sink before she was literally turned inside out. After washing her face and brushing her teeth, she slowly crawled out of the bathroom, made it to the kitchen, and drank a glass of cold water in one gulp. She felt better. But Tom couldn't stay home and continue cleaning as if nothing had happened. She quickly threw things back into the closet, tore the fateful brochure into small pieces, and flushed the glossy scraps down the toilet. She dressed somehow and hurried to Sarah's. Who else could she tell and be sure they'd listen and not blab? Mother definitely wouldn't keep quiet, and then she'd be done for. Paul would be forced to explain himself, and this might push him to leave. Sarah lived nearby. No point taking the car. You spend more time in traffic jams. Tom ran down the street, feeling sick again, but that was unimportant now. Before leaving, she had taken activated charcoal, Mom's universal remedy for all gastrointestinal ailments. It should take effect soon. Already climbing the stairs, Tom remembered she hadn't called Sarah before leaving. Sarah couldn't stand when people showed up without calling. She'd been like that since childhood. Couldn't bear when anything was done without her consent. Well, what was there to think about now? This wasn't that kind of situation. She'd understand they were friends or what. Sarah opened the door and, of course, initially made a displeased face, even seemed flustered. But Tom wasn't in the mood for apologies. She flew past Sarah into the room, forgetting to take off her shoes, and flopped into the armchair. Good thing you're home. I need to talk to you. I can't. She cut herself off mid-sentence and looked around. Where's Ben? Ben, where are you? At my mother's. She took him to spoil him. Her friend's voice was tense, probably annoyed at her visit. Or maybe she was expecting her boyfriend. She had someone new and kept promising to introduce them. Sarah, I'm sorry for barging in, but you understand I found out. It turned out to be hard to say this. Tom felt so sorry for herself, so hurt and ashamed of her clumsy life, that she burst into tears. Ugly crying, with wailing, with her teeth chattering against the rim of the glass of water Sarah brought. Paul has a woman. Today I was cleaning the closet and accidentally found a voucher in his things. He went on vacation with this woman when... Not finishing, Tom looked at her friend and stumbled over her gaze. Sarah was looking with her gray eyes wide open, and in them stood something incomprehensible. Joy, malicious pleasure, mockery, and even triumph. And somewhere at the very, very bottom, guilt. At first Tom decided it was all about envy. She was probably jealous of her well-being and now gloating. But a moment later, Tom understood that it wasn't about this eternal secret female. Resentment toward a more successful friend. This was something else. "Sarah, it's you, isn't it?" Tom said in shock, not having time to properly think through her words. "It's with you that he has." Sarah jumped up and suddenly almost screamed, choking on her words. "Well, there's a God in the world. Finally! How long could I have suffered, Tom? Your blindness tore my whole soul out. I told him everything. Just live, just stay with me. I even had little Ben, and he says he can't survive without Tom. I can't leave Tom. How will we live after this? So, Ben, Sarah, Ben, what is he then?" "Yes, that's right, he's Paul's son. That's what. Paul and I have been together for 3 years now. Well, I thought I'll have his baby since you can't. Then he'll leave you. But no, the boy is almost a year old and he's still afraid. I just can't understand what he's holding on to you for. Look at yourself. Your parents fussed over you your whole life. Now Paul does. How do you live? How? Who are you? A damn housewife. Nobody else. Get it? You couldn't study, couldn't work, couldn't have a child. Everything handed to you. You can't even buy your own sanitary pads. You ask your husband for pantyhose money. You're a burden. At least if you were raising children. But no, you just grow your behind. Paul works like an ox, and you drag yourself around beauty salons and shops. Don't shout, Sarah. My head is splitting, Tom whispered, pressing her fingers to her temples. Oh, let it split. Did anyone pity me? Well, tell me, did they? I earned everything myself, this apartment, the car, everything. I spin around like crazy. And I'm alone on all holidays, raising Ben alone. Paul's always in snatches, always covering the phone with his palm. So you wouldn't find out. Ugh, I'm so sick of all this. She sharply slashed her palm across her throat. I can't even look at you anymore. And how you didn't feel this, I don't understand. You think I'm going to ask your forgiveness? Yeah, right. Will I repent? Don't hold your breath. Don't ask, Tom agreed. Why do you have a son? That's right, we have a son. I'm his real wife. I gave him a son. And you? What if? He was the first one I liked back in college. But you're our beauty, from a good family. Mommy and Daddy got you into school, dressed like a doll. The only daughter Mommy and Daddy have. How could I compete with you? Don't shout, Sarah. Tom asked again. Her friend's hatred stunned and burned her. If you hated me so much, why did you stay friends with me all these years? We've been together so long, and you never showed it. I didn't always feel this way about you. Sarah had worn herself out and spoke quieter and calmer. Anyway, none of this matters. Enough, I don't want to. Thank God everything resolved itself. And you didn't find out from me. Otherwise, Paul wouldn't have forgiven me, though he probably left that paper on purpose. Sarah smirked maliciously, and Tom flinched as if slapped. He's probably sick of it, too. Well, now everything will be different. He'll divorce you, and we'll get married. We'll raise Ben. I'll have a girl for him, too. He wants a daughter now. He said so himself. Drowsy fatigue suddenly washed over Tom. She wanted to lie down like a bear in a den and have no one bother her. She didn't even have the strength to get out of the armchair, but she needed to get out of here quickly. Another wave of nausea hit. She jumped up and ran to the bathroom, pressing her hands to her mouth. Her friend watched her go with a sharp gaze. Well, better get the divorce process quickly just in case, she decided. Tom came out of the bathroom and stood in the doorway. Out of habit, she glanced at the wall where the clock used to hang. She had given it to Sarah one New Year's, but there was no clock. Instead, a large color photograph in a frame was displayed. Sarah, Paul, and Ben, a happy family, loving parents, and a sweet baby. They were all laughing. It seemed they'd just been caught off guard, though the shot was obviously a studio setup. Good photographer, Tom muttered. Yeah, not bad, Sarah confirmed. She looked at pale Tom with dark circles under her eyes mercilessly and directly. Where's the clock? I never liked it. I only hung it up before you came over. Paul asked me to, Sarah snorted. You called that you were coming. I'd hide the photo and hang up the clock. What a madhouse. We lied ourselves sick. We were protecting your health and delicate emotional constitution. What time is it now? I forgot my phone at home and there's no clock. What? Oh, right. You always need to note down to the minute. Sarah grabbed her phone from the nightstand. 3:30. Imagine that. Only 4 hours have passed since I started cleaning, Tom said in a weak voice with surprise. Sarah stood stretched out, clutching her mobile phone. You're not going to say anything. Don't you want to know when it started with us? We need to talk about what to do now, how we'll proceed. For the first time, uncertainty sounded in her voice. Why are you silent? You're asking some nonsense, clock's time. What is there to say, Sarah? You said everything yourself. Everything's decided. You'll live together. You have a son. What should I do? Wish you happiness. You'll manage without my wishes. You had a son and will have a daughter. I won't interfere, won't hold on to Paul. Don't worry. Tom looked once more into Paul's happy eyes in the photograph, turned, and slowly walked away from Sarah's apartment. Thank you for listening to the story until the end. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends and loved ones. It motivates us to keep working on new stories every day. Don't miss the next amazing story that's about to appear on your screen. We're very grateful to have you with us. See you soon.